Welcome to Strength in the Numbers. My name is Andrew Codd, accountant, author, and commercial finance entrepreneur, and it's my job each week to bring you leaders in finance and business and deconstruct with them their real stories, insights, and hard-won lessons into practical advice on the key strengths and qualities you need to remain relevant in accounting and finance today, as well as the steps you can begin to take to elevate the impact you make to have a fun, successful, and rewarding career in accounting and finance. Now let's go over to the show. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode number 8 of the Strength in the Numbers show, which you can find with detailed show notes with all the relevant links to resources that will accelerate the impact you make in your finance and accounting career at sitnshow.com/podcast/008. On today's show, we have Wei Chien Yoong, Audit Lead Asia Pacific at Cargill, one of the largest private companies in the world. She's currently based out of Singapore. Wei Chien has picked up great international experience, having been based out of 3 continents at one time or another, all of which has helped her develop a very well-rounded appreciation of accounting and finance throughout her career. Her current interests are helping finance leverage the value of sustainability audits for the benefit of the business and local communities, and also looking into the impact of blockchain on our profession. On the show, Wei Chien touches on how diversity and audit perspectives can unlock value within the business, particularly sharing some very useful ideas on where sustainability to organisations and their bottom lines. Leveraging her background in global service centre transformation, she touches on what automation and blockchain will mean for other shared service centres and the rest of our profession into the future. She also shares some extremely relevant advice on one thing we can all do and practice so that we can have a fun, rewarding and successful career in finance and accounting, and one that's really adding impact to our stakeholders. And finally, it was really great fun getting to know Wei Chien during the recording of the show. She's very much down to earth, funny, very articulate and extremely passionate about our profession making a positive impact for our businesses and communities. So without further ado, over to Wei Chien and the show. So welcome to the show, Wei Chien.
Thank you, Andrew. Very happy to be on the show.
Well, look, delighted to have you with us. As you know, we're starting this pilot series and we brought you on to share your perspectives that you've gained from your international experiences and also with your audit background so that we can help other accounting and finance professionals figure out how to have a successful and rewarding career. You just recently moved roles. How's the move gone for you?
The move has gone reasonably well, I think, in the overall scheme of things, other than a little bit of infrastructure challenges in terms of Wi-Fi connection and stuff like that. But other than that, it has all been good. And again, thank you for having me on the show. I've been more than happy to share what I've learned throughout the years at different places with the audience of the podcast, and hopefully I can make a small impact or difference to the profession.
Fantastic, Wei Chien. And we'd just like to get to know more a bit about your story. So how did you get into your current role in accounting and finance?
Well, to first talk about how did I actually get into my current role, I think it's good to share how did I actually get into accounting to start with. I actually got into accounting at the wish of my parents because it used to be perceived accounting professions to be a very secure role or job, and generally, an accountant make quite a lot of money as well. But I guess that perception does need some fine-tuning at current time. The profession, is no longer secure per se. It is evolving and changing very quickly, more than ever, not at my parents' generation. The profession at current nowadays does require a very strong people focus and stakeholders centric mindset that I call it, and the ability to translate, to understand the numbers and interpret the numbers into insight, therefore supporting growth and development of the business. Now, then, as you kind of share a little about my background. Throughout my career, I have worked on different roles. And now I'm working in the internal audit and risk management space with Cargill. And Cargill is one of the world's largest integrated commodities agricultural supply chain group. It's privately owned. Its headquarters in Minneapolis.
Am I right in thinking it's actually one of the largest privately held businesses in the world?
Yes, it's one of the largest, yep.
It does seem when you sort of mention about insights, influence, and sort of finding your way to internal audit, it does strike me a bit that it's more of like a business partnering skill set as opposed to technical finance, despite being in audit. Is that sort of fair to say?
Yep, you're absolutely right. Don't get me wrong, the technical capability needs to be there. That's the foundation. That's where you can have a constructive and knowledgeable conversation with your stakeholders. But that itself, it's definitely not enough in current environment. The current environment is just as what you described. It's about partnering with the business and translate the numbers into insight and share that with the business.
What ways have you sort of found that we can better partner with the business, particularly from an audit perspective, or any others you've gained from your extensive career? What recommendations would you make for our audience?
If talking about from an audit perspective, at the current environment, I would think it's the ability to cross some of the strategic risks that the business is facing. That's at a macro broad level. One of it, which later on I'd be more than happy to share, will be around sustainability. So that is definitely a strategic risk imperative for most of the business. One thing that I will for sure recommend for anybody in the finance, professional accounting, finance, or audit in particular, will be having a global and broad perspective about the risk area that the business is facing. A lot of the audit profession that I have worked with in the past, be it external or internal, tend to have a very checkbox mindset, as in, it's very structured, it's very square, you check off the box and you get your job done. But I don't think that is going to sustain or last. That is not what business is looking for. Business is looking for auditor that is, as I mentioned, more well-rounded, understand the business, connect with the business, understand what is the real risk to the business, and understand what is the practical mitigation plan or control plans that needs to be put in place. Because we're not talking about a perfect scenario. We run a business, there's always risk. So the auditor needs to have that perspective to come in and say, look, what is practical for the business to do in terms of mitigating the risks, and what are some of the risks that the business will accept and continue to operate in that manner. So yeah, that global perspective, that broad perspective of what business is about, that is very, very important.
You start and finished with that global and broad perspective. How or what ways could fellow auditors, accountants, and finance professionals go about getting that global and broad experience? Is it similar to yourself? You just work in a number of different diverse industries or a number of different roles? What's the best thing to do?
I guess I was very fortunate throughout my career. I was given the opportunity to work in different countries, different roles, and with different people. So that certainly helps in terms of providing an opportunity for a person to have that global and broad perspective. But assuming the person doesn't have that kind of opportunity, he or she can still develop that, because we're talking about a age of internet right now. But the individual must have that sense of curiosity and wanted to learn and understand and to be close to the business. As in, as an audit, when you go out there for an assignment, you talk to business about, what is driving the business, what is the drivers of the business. Talk to the business leader, talk to the operation people. What are the concerns that they have about the business? What are the opportunities that they see? So those conversations will help them to have a better understanding of the business and context as well. Instead of, just focusing on a checklist, which is still very common by a lot of the internal audit function and profession, or even external audit, of having that particular fairly strict guideline or program that you need to follow. So it's in addition to that program, take the opportunity out there to talk to people. And again, everything is on the internet right now, so he or she for sure will be able to learn more about the business. And then, take what you learn on the internet, also talk to the business about, you say, for example, you're going to Africa for an audit. I'm making this up, but say, for example, you're going to audit a cocoa business. There's so much you can read on the internet this day about, and one of the very important strategic risks that the business is facing is on sustainability. You can read those things and understand what other competitors are doing, what are your current companies doing, and then have that conversation with the business. So that broad perspective for sure can be gained without having to leave and work outside of your home country.
And I do agree. I think it's very important that as much as maybe historically internal audit, we might have gone site to site to various different countries perhaps as well, or cross nationally. Things are changing. More things are being done remotely. A lot of companies are looking into their expense accounts. So it's not necessarily a case of always jumping on a plane or a train or driving to another site. It might be done much more remotely. So not everyone's going to have the similar experiences. And I think you gave a very good sense of how people can go about the experience, even if they're just sort of sitting in an office, prior research, things like that. That helps get that global and broad perspective we were talking about. And you touched on sustainability audits as well, Wei Chien. By the way, fantastic article you shared with us on LinkedIn. I think in your article you pointed out perhaps that it was an emerging risk area for businesses. And I was wondering if it was perhaps maybe traditionally we weren't used to addressing those risks, or was there something else we were missing? So why in your mind should we be thinking more about sustainability, and particularly sustainability audits?
When I said it's emerging, is by talking to different, some of my contact colleagues who are in the profession, and also the big four accounting. But if I looked at Cargill overall as an organization, we are moving very fast on the sustainability space. Now then, looking at what audit is doing right now is a little bit of a catching out. So that's where I mentioned it's an emerging area that for audit to stay relevant and useful for the business, it has to start to look into this. So that's where I'm coming from. And I mean, sustainability has always been something I'm passionate about, living in this part of the world. We have a lot of issues with climate and food security.
Yes. And look, I think that's something that's going to be more front of our minds. Sometimes we can have our heads buried in the numbers, but if we cared to look up, there's a community and environment all around us, and whatever we can do to help our businesses, but also our communities, is a good win-win to have. So just, I suppose, in terms of your mind, maybe some of the research you've done or case studies or experiences you've had, even if you touch on what is a sustainability audit for some of our audience who may not be as familiar.
If you look at sustainability, a lot of people immediately think about climate change, but it's much broader than just climate change. There are three pillars in sustainability if you looked at sustainability in a holistic manner. So the first, of course, is the climate. That's the environment that we're talking about. Now, the second pillar is about people, which is the community, the society that we can all make an impact. Now, last not least is the economy of a society or a group of people. Now, a lot of the work that I have seen, but because after all, measurement, valuation, and reporting is always something the accountant are very, very good at. But if you looked at auditing sustainability, then much more than just looking at reporting assurance. In my view, again, this is my personal view, there are other areas which audit or finance in general can offer to partner and work with the business on sustainability. Say, for example, help our stakeholders or help our business understand better our costs, say, for example. So to understand our costs better, say, energy savings, or water usage, how do we use water more efficiently, and to be part of developing of green products, or even talk about retaining and motivating our employees, the entire they call it employee branding, I believe. All of this will help companies capture value through growth and also through return on capital. But those are not the area I think have been been looked at that closely in the last little while.
You wouldn't really think finance would traditionally be involved there. So that's really appreciate you sharing that with our audience, because again, like myself, I would not have known we could maybe step into those areas. So that represents a nice opportunity or area that perhaps we've never even considered, but we, more than potentially the way you described it, have the strengths to make a difference in. So thank you very much for that. And actually, just out of interest, maybe carrying on from that, are there any particular areas that are exciting you at the moment about your job work or finance in general?
Yes. In terms of the new role that I'm getting in right now, when I was in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, it was more of a Malaysia focused assignment. So it's very much focused on a local team. But with the new role, I'm going to work with a global team, and I see myself having an ability to really make an impact. Now, first about team, the audit team is a very global team at Cargill. I enjoy the interaction, learning, working with people from a diverse background, like with yourself as well. And that's how I see innovation is unlocked. As in, you do need that diversity to unlock the innovation with different view and opinion. And I truly believe collectively as a group, we are going to improve on the group thinking and the approach as well. And that's what I see in audit. I mean, like, say, for example, I'm going on an assignment shortly to Australia. I'm going to work with people from Turkey. I'm going to work with, of course, the Australians, but within the audit team, there are people from Turkey, the people from Latin America, and that diversity really excites me. Now, so that's team. Now, the other aspect of it is, having the ability to work on sustainability. To me, is an area that we need to start to pay some attention, and how to start to think about the framework, the approach that we're going to do at Cargill. That those are the two areas that really excite me at the moment.
Diversity in particular, often undervalued as a source of innovation of ideas, particularly in finance. So it's absolutely fantastic. And I would encourage anyone in accounting and finance just to try and reach out, bounce up against people in different areas within finance even, or outside of finance. And these shows are aimed to spark ideas in people's minds so they can innovate. And innovate isn't a case of coming up with something completely new. It could be sort of enhancing, as you sort of were saying there, Wei Chien, an existing framework. It's just making what's already there a little bit better and building on that. So it's not coming up with something completely new, something revolutionary. It's maybe some small increments. And if we keep doing that, we'll move down the path eventually, and we'll actually end up making quite a big difference along the way. So thank you for sharing. That sounds really exciting. As part of the new role, Wei Chien, the next 12 months are going to be very interesting. What would be the main priorities for you in your mind?
Priority that I will be working on in the next 12 months is on the looking at our shared services center, which will be kind of a bit of an extension from what I've done in Malaysia, although it's just a Malaysia migration work that I've done to the shared services center. As the shared services center at Cargill matured, and the audit team have done quite a lot of work as well, it is now time for us to take a holistic view on how do we audit, how do we, the audit team, partner with the shared services center, we call them the center, including leveraging technology for some of the review that we are doing, and also external benchmarking, so that we introduce an external perspective, and also introducing some of the ideas, say, for example, customer focused mindset to the center. Because at the moment it is very much just a internal so-called efficiency and transaction focusing operation.
And in terms of looking at the centre, as you call it, I guess where sustainability in my mind is very much about, I suppose, people. Is the work in the centre more about process and technology? Like, what role is automation, I'm sort of thinking of, and maybe robotics playing in the work there?
Yes, at the center is more around processes, technology, and data. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The center is exploring on automation, robotics. But I tend to look at the center on a kind of a maturity curve kind of thing. At the moment, it is still very much just, getting the basic right and making sure we process the transaction in the most efficient and effective manner, both cost and also the resources allocation. Now, the next phase is likely to be technology, and then it's kind of then shift along the maturity curve to something that towards the end, I would imagine the center will be able to offer quite some value-added services in terms of analytics and some of the FP&A work that can potentially be done out from the center as well.
That's excellent. I think that's a good way of looking at it as well, this maturity type curve. I remember sharing a while back some thoughts around this insight productivity frontier, and if you get the good foundations around the data, the reporting, it allows you to step up into higher value analytics and sort of helping the business navigate what's around the corner. So again, another way of making finance and accounting more valuable to our stakeholders. Is there any sort of risk with the automation of any job displacement, or do you sort of see it more as people changing how they approach their roles? What's your thoughts there?
I would think it's more of people changing their role, or a new job will be created and at different locations as well. I mean, inevitably, there will be people that is or are going to lose their job, maybe due to a location change, not necessarily the job has disappeared. I guess is an outcome of globalization, and less so in technology. I would think because there will be new jobs that get created. It's just that is going to get created maybe at a different location, say for example in India. Now, as an accounting and finance professional, then the question that you have to ask yourself is, are you going to be competitive going to work in India? But the job will still be there in a different shades and forms. I would think that's my best guess.
Well, look, I completely agree. I do think that there's still going to be a requirement for people to translate, understand what's going on in the numbers, and guide the business in their decision making. Mm. And that will never go away. It just might change how we do it, or maybe how much we can do it of. I think a lot of commentators talk about how much we spend our time at the moment looking at the right sources of the data, cleaning it up, figuring out what to report, and building those reports and sending them out on email perhaps, whereas we really should be investing the time in the analytics and the advisory perspective of driving the business forward. So that is, how that will unfold, we're not sure, but there will be some disruption. That is what we do know for sure. So I'm going to sort of change gears a little bit, Wei Chien. You did mention earlier that developed a very broad perspective, a well-rounded perspective from all your various roles and experiences. What I'd really like for you to do is perhaps maybe share with us like a key strategic insight you've picked up along your way, and that might be beneficial for our listeners.
When I moved from Cargill and join a FMCG or a CPG company called Diageo. Cargill is a commodity agriculture supply chain company, so money is made on moving bulk shipments and goods, as compared to what Diageo does as a premium alcohol company. You sell on brand, and you sell on differentiation and your premium offerings. That was when I was there. I got involved in terms of looking at the value chain and margin analysis, and with emphasis on where profit margin is taken by different players along the value chain. Now, and the impact on the final consumer price that we're paying as a consumer. With that, I kind of reflected upon the business model of Cargill versus what I was seeing back then. Then in my mind, I was thinking that's probably going to be a matter of time. A number of the businesses will need to make a strategic shift or choice in terms of where they want to play and how do they want to position themselves, and the gap in the current capabilities and how to close those. And indeed, that was the case when I rejoined Cargill in 2016 when I was in Malaysia. I saw that happening across a number of the businesses in Cargill, and when they started to look at what the customer needs are versus what we can offer, and also what our competitors are offering. Of course, there's a white space, or blue ocean, some people call it, that untapped market that everybody is hoped to get to. Therefore capturing the max so-called margin and also opportunity. That will be the biggest aha moment. And right now I'm seeing it happening just in front of my eyes.
Yeah, I think margins are going to become even more important with all the digital disruption, the new business models out there. I mean, there's companies sprouting up all over the world, even in and around that white space of traditional industries where they've got very low or zero marginal costs. So in effect, their revenue is their gross margin pretty much. So a very important area for us to focus on, and probably even more important now. And I know I've seen that in my roles, in my consulting experience. There's always seemingly opportunity in and around the gross margin space if you look hard enough and you talk in and around the area, which means talking to business partners, talking to people externally and internally, and connecting all the dots and then conveying the information in a way that businesses can understand how they need to act on. And that's exactly what they're looking for from us. Really great strategic insight. Wei Chien, what I'm going to do now is go into a lightning question round. So some quick fire questions. And I was going to start with, if you were looking back earlier in your career, maybe when you were starting that journey in accounting and finance you described earlier, what advice would you have given your younger self?
I guess the advice that I would have given myself back then and now, it would have been the same advice. And I've always been doing this as well consistently, is to be true to yourself. I think that's very, very important. To know what your passion is and go for it and never give out. And I guess that has given me a attribute that I'm always very proud of is authenticity. To be a good business partner or a finance person, whatever that you call, or even a business leader, one has to be authentic. Authentic as in, be honest about your strength, your weaknesses, and not to be afraid to be vulnerable with your peers, even with your boss or with your colleagues. You can only do that when you're true to yourself. So that's the advice that I would give to anybody else.
Couldn't agree more. And that's if you want a meaningful, rewarding and a successful career, the only way that's going to happen is if you are true to yourself, because if you're not, it's never going to sit right with you. Mm. I like how you mentioned being a little vulnerable as well. Again, that's just part of being human. And as much as some people look at us accountants and think that you're all about the numbers, you probably haven't got the best emotional or social intelligence. I can tell you we're not like that. We are human beings as well. And the more we let that shine through, I think the more we'll enjoy ourselves and the more value we're there to add. So great bit of advice. Just thinking in terms of resources for our listeners, would there be one sort of audio book or documentary you might recommend to our audience that they should go check out?
I do have a book. It's a very, very old book. It is not an indication of my age, but okay. I'm not sure if you've heard of this book before. It's called The Little Prince. It's by a French author. I can never get his name right in terms of pronunciation. But in that little book, I always remember there's a phrase when it talk about it's only with the heart that one can see it rightly, and what is essential is invisible to the eye. Again, coming up from an accountant, it sounds a little odd, but I guess coming back to being a human and to be a good and trusted business partner, you must have that human element and must have the ability to empathize and connect with people. And this particular book has taught me a lot of those, including be authentic, be true to yourself.
The Little Prince, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry.
Yes. Yeah.
The joys of the internet. I didn't know that off the top of my head. Anyhow, so yeah, this is me being honest and authentic. But yes, it's one of the great fables. I shall put links to that in our show notes. So, Wei Chien, thank you for sharing that with us and why it's such a great resource. I guess, in terms of the finance professional today, there's some sort of qualities we've discussed people should maybe be looking towards developing. But for the finance person of the future, what would be, in your mind, the key qualities that they need to be developing now to remain relevant, not only today, but also into the future?
Having that global and open mindset and having that curiosity about changes. When a person has that curiosity, in general, they tend to be a lot more receptive and open about change. And I can foresee there are going to be more changes coming along, be it technology, be it globalization, or just, or even politics that's possible that impacts some of the policy as well that will affect the finance professional. Keep an open mind, be curious about things that will ensure, the relevance into the future. There is an area that I think the accountants should really start to pay attention. This is on blockchain, not because, I'm researching on blockchain, but I truly think it's going to disrupt quite a lot of things in terms of how transaction is going to be recorded and how analytics is going to be done. And just in the last few months when I was talking to different finance professionals, be it in Malaysia or Singapore or even overseas, and some of them don't even know what blockchain is. I think the other thing about finance is to really at least pay some attention to what is the mega trends. You don't have to know in details, but at least the basic, understand what that is.
For very good advice, Wei Chien, because there's so many mega trends you mentioned out there. So I think I've got it down to 2, but they're quite extensive. Definitely the digitization, which blockchain is a part of, and also business partnering, which is probably how we're sort of dealing with what some commentators are calling the fourth industrial revolution. But if people are taking that global and broad perspective, then I think you've given them some great advice and food for thought. Thank you for sharing so much about yourself with our audience and those listening to the show. If people wanted to get in contact with you, what's the best way?
They can find me on LinkedIn. Yeah, that will be the easiest way to get in touch with me. Drop me a message. I will always get back to you.
So Wei Chien, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. Been fun. People are really going to get to know a lot more about you, and you've helped them in their journey, giving them some sort of areas of opportunity around sustainability, and also some really great explanations around why authentics being important, but also what skills to develop, the broad, well-rounded skill sets that are going to be required for the future success of our profession. So thank you so much for your time.
No, happy to. And thank you so much. It has been a fun experience. And then, I really enjoyed this. We have to do some more of this podcasting.
So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed today's show. If you'd like to know more about our guests today, their bio, and follow up on the resources mentioned during the show, you can find all the relevant links and more at sitnshow.com. There you'll also be able to get access to earlier shows, read the latest blogs. There's also an opportunity to subscribe to our newsletter, which will give you heads up as to when the next show is coming out, latest events, news, and anything that's going to be relevant to help you have a fun, rewarding and successful career in finance and accounting. And just before you go, we really appreciate your feedback. If there's something we can do better on the show, something that's not working, or something you'd like to see, even a guest you'd like for us to invite onto the show, someone who you think might be able to benefit you more and also the rest of our community, please let me know. You can email me. I'm at andrew@sitnshow.com, or feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Just drop me a message so I know how you found me and we can connect. And really, it's our community that'll make the show. If we keep engaging and driving each other on, we'll keep on building our strength in the numbers. When all is said and done, if we can do the numbers better and finance better, we'll create more opportunities for ourselves, our friends, our families, our communities and our businesses. So until next time, have a good rest of the week, take care, and let's keep building our strength in the numbers.